there's a big debate about training data. You guys have been, I think, the most thoughtful of any company. You've got licensing deals now, FT, et cetera. And we got to, I guess, be gentle here because you're involved in a New York Times lawsuit. You weren't able to settle, I guess, an arrangement with them for training data. How do you think about fairness in fair use? We've had big debates here on the pod. Obviously, your actions are, speak volumes that you're trying to be fair by doing licensing deals. So what's your personal position on the rights of artists who create beautiful music, lyrics, books, and you taking that and then making a derivative product out of it and then monetizing it? And what's fair here? And how do we get to a world where, artists can make content in the world and then decide what they want other people to do with it? Yeah. And I'm just curious your personal belief, because I know you to be a thoughtful person on this. And I know a lot of other people in our industry are not very thoughtful about how they think about content creators.
So I think it's very different for different kinds of, look, on fair use, I think we have a very reasonable position under the current law, but I think AI is so different that for things like art, we'll need to think about them in different ways. But let's say if you go read a bunch of math on the internet and learn how to do math, that I think seems unobjectionable to most people. And then there's another set of people who might have a different opinion. Well, what if you actually, let me not get into that just in the interest of not making this answer too long. So I think there's one category people are okay, there's generalized human knowledge. You can kind of go, if you learn that, that's open domain or something. If you kind of go learn about the Pythagorean theorem. That's one end of the spectrum. And then I think the other extreme end of the spectrum is art. And maybe even more specifically, I would say it's a system generating art in the style or the likeness of another artist, would be kind of the furthest end of that. And then there's many, many cases on the spectrum in between. I think the conversation has been historically very caught up on training data, but it will increasingly become more about what happens at inference time. As training data becomes less valuable and what the system does accessing, information in context in real time or, taking like something like that, what happens at inference time will become more debated and how what the new economic model is there. So if you say create me a song in the style of Taylor Swift, even if the model were never trained on any Taylor Swift songs at all, you can still have a problem, which is that it may have read about Taylor Swift, it may know about her themes, Taylor Swift means something. And then the question is should that model, even if it were never trained on any Taylor Swift song whatsoever, be allowed to do that? And if so, how should Taylor get paid?
Right.
So I think there's an opt-in, opt-out in that case, first of all, and then there's an economic model. Staying on the music example, there is something interesting to look at from the historical perspective here, which is sampling and how the economics around that work. This is not quite the same thing, but it's an interesting place to start looking.
Sam, let me just challenge that. What's the difference in the example you're giving of the model learning about things like song structure, tempo, melody, harmony relationships, discovering all the underlying structure that makes music successful, and then building new music using training data, and what a human does that listens to lots of music, learns about, and their brain is processing and building all those same sort of predictive models or those same sort of discoveries or understandings. What's the difference here? And why are you making the case that perhaps artists should be uniquely paid? This is not a sampling situation. The AI is not outputting and it's not storing in the model the actual original song.
Yeah,
it's learning structure. Right.
So, I wasn't trying to make that point because I agree, in the same way that humans are inspired by other humans. I was saying if you say generate me a song in the style of Taylor Swift.
I see. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's
where the prompt leverages some artist.
I think personally that's a different case.
would you be comfortable asking, or would you be comfortable letting the model train itself, or a music model being trained on the whole corpus of music that humans have created without royalties being paid to the artists that that music is being fed in? And then you're not allowed to ask, artist-specific prompts. You could just say, hey, play me a really cool pop song that's fairly modern about heartbreak, with a female voice,
We have currently made the decision not to do music, and partly because exactly these questions of where you draw the lines and even I was meeting with several musicians that I really admire recently. I was just trying to talk about some of these edge cases, but even the world in which if we went and let's say we paid 10,000 musicians to create a bunch of music just to make a great training set where the music model could learn everything about song structure and what makes a good, catchy beat and everything else, and only trained on that. Let's say we could still make a great music model, which maybe we could. I was kind of posing that as a thought experiment to musicians, and they're like, well, I can't object to that on any principle basis at that point. And yet there's still something I don't like about it. Now, that's not a reason not to do it necessarily, but it is. Did you see that ad that Apple put out? Maybe it was yesterday or something, of squishing all of human creativity down into one really thin iPad.
What was your take on it? People got really emotional about it. Yeah. It's a stronger reaction than you would think. Yeah.
There's something about. I'm obviously hugely positive on AI, but there is something that I think is beautiful about human creativity and human artistic expression. And, for an AI that just does better science, great, bring that on. But an AI that is going to do this deeply beautiful human creative expression, I think we should figure out, it's going to happen. It's going to be a tool that will lead us to greater creative heights. But I think we should figure out how to do it in a way that preserves the spirit of what we all care about here.
And I think your actions speak loudly. We were trying to do Star Wars characters in DALL-E. And if you ask for Darth Vader, it says, hey, we can't do that. So you've, I guess, red teamed or whatever you call it internally.
We try.
You're not allowing people to use other people's IP. So you've taken that decision. Now, if you asked it to make a Jedi bulldog or a Sith Lord bulldog, which I did, it made my bulldogs as Sith bulldogs. So
there's an interesting question
it's really about your spectrum, right?
Yeah. We put out this thing yesterday called the spec, where we're trying to say, here's how our model is supposed to behave. And it's very hard. It's a long document. It's very hard to specify exactly in each case where the limits should be. And I view this as a discussion that's going to need a lot more input. But these sorts of questions about, okay, maybe it shouldn't generate Darth Vader, but the idea of a Sith Lord or a Sith style thing or Jedi at this point is part of the culture. Or these are all hard decisions.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The music industry is going to consider this opportunity to make Taylor Swift songs their opportunity. It's part of the 4-part fair use test. Is these who gets to capitalize on new innovations for existing art, and Disney has an argument that hey, if you're going to make Sora versions of Ashoka or whatever, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's Disney's opportunity. And that's a great partnership for you, to pursue.
So I think this section I would label as AI and the law. So let me ask maybe a higher level question.